Hi, everybody. Welcome to Jen's Pen, where we find interesting people who are making the world a better place and ask them to share their story. Today, we have Andrae Smith Jr. We have welcomed him already once to the show, but I had asked him to come back as a special treat to us because we are going to discuss story structure. Andrae, well, you know what, Andrae, why don't you explain what you do because it's related to what I do, and then we can get into talking about story structure.
Fantastic. And just as a caveat, I'm here on campus and the internet's usually pretty good, but if it starts getting a little glitchy, that is connectivity. I'm doing my best.
That's right.
Secondly, thank you for having me back. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Fantastic. So thank you again for having me back on. It's a pleasure to be here. So like you said, my name is Andrae Smith Jr. Got to add the junior in there now that my dad's gotten into the writing game. And I am an author, two-time author now, a book writing coach, as well as an editor. I've been an editor for a handful of years now. I say 10, but you know, it fluctuates a little bit depending on if I add the years of writing development in there. But I focus primarily right now on nonfiction in terms of self-help, and I focus on working with coaches, experts, healers, movement leaders to transform their message and their personal stories into books that matter, make a difference, and really transform lives. That being said, I have a massive passion and background in fiction, and anyone who may be watching my timeline has probably seen a little bit of the itch to do some creative writing lately. So that's a little bit about me. I'll keep it there.
Well, you know, I think a lot of us who write nonfiction also have a passion for fiction, and that's kind of the direction we're headed in. And I'm looking forward to NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month, this in November. So there's a little, you know, chance to write some fiction. But okay, Andrae, let's discuss story structure. First, let's start off just talking about what story structure actually is.
All right. Well, this is one of my favorite topics because maybe it's being male-brained, maybe it's being, you know, super left-brain or right-brain. I like systems organization. I use the whole thing. It's in here somewhere. But I love structure. I think structure, number one, is what makes a story versus a retelling or some type of just general narrative. When you think about a story, at least when I do, I think of movement, and generally it's the movement both internally and externally of a character through a few different phases from one point to another. To get a little bit less abstract here, if you take, say, the hero's journey, that is a common narrative style. And in that, there's a structure where basically you have the starting point, the character's life before anything happens. Then you have an inciting incident wherein they're like, hey, my life is wrecked. What am I gonna do? And so they go on this new quest in order to get back, at least initially, to their sense of normalcy. They're constantly chasing, their motivation is to get back to their sense of normality. And in that, you then have your rising action as they learn and they grow and they move throughout different points of the story. And then you have finally the climax, wherein all the different storylines, all the plot lines, all the dramas and tensions come to a head. Then you have the falling action where it's like, okay, how are we going to resolve this particular story? And as you look at that, that sounds very like, I'm diving right in today, but like, it's all about movement from point A to Z. And your story structure is essentially how you're going to take your character and your readers from A to Z. Are you going to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or A, C, E, back to D a little bit, and so on until finally they both emotionally and mentally and materially end up at Z, wherever that is for your story.
Excellent. Okay, so how then can we use structure, especially in maybe our audience is looking to write books that convey their message. How can we use structure to tell more of a nonfiction self-help kind of book story?
Absolutely. So storytelling in nonfiction, specifically in self-help versus memoir or autobiography, is always geared towards serving a purpose. It's geared towards the so what, as I sometimes call it. Your reader isn't reading to be entertained. They like being entertained. And if they're not, they will probably put your book down and not pick it back up, even though they know it's good material. But they are wanting to learn something. And this is where we have the idea of like old fables and fairy tales. They always had some type of moral to the story, even the parables. There was never just the story for the sake of the story. There was always a very clear and distinctive point. And so what you're doing with storytelling in self-help is you are picking out stories or storylines from the same sort of event. And I'll get into that a little bit later, maybe. Whether or not you choose one large story or snippets from various points in your life, but you're choosing the ones that best highlight the purpose. And so when we think about story structure for this, the way I think about it is essentially you want to have some type of hook or intro into the story. Then you want to have some exposition, what's happening in the story. You're going to build in some reflection on what's happening, because you're not just telling the story, but you are taking the seat of the narrator, looking back on the story, and you're contextualizing, you're constantly framing it for your reader. And then you're going to conclude the story with both how it ended, not in the grand scheme, but how this section ended, as well as what it means to you now and what it should mean to the reader. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So you were just mentioning, you mentioned a couple of things, well, several things that I'd like to delve deeper into. What you mentioned that, number one, a reader of a book like this isn't come to necessarily be entertained, but they do have to be entertained in order to continue reading it, right? We have to hook them using the hook, right? So let's kind of explore what a hook is. Why is there a hook? Why do they need a hook? And what are the elements of an effective hook?
So it depends on your style of writing. Coming from a very strong fiction background, I tend to jump in with some type of action or some scene setting, depends on where we're at. And of course, where the story is positioned within a chapter. That's getting really technical. But
Yeah.
what the hook basically is a sentence or two that grabs the reader's attention and essentially makes them focus on this page. If you think about headlines in copywriting, your goal is to stop the scroll. When it comes to writing books, especially in fiction, it's generally accepted amongst writers that you want to hook your readers within the first page. If
At
you,
least.
depending on where your school of thought is, you got about 2 sentences to do that.
Right.
And when you
Exactly.
think about it, really it's before that. You're lucky if you get in there. If readers buyer psychology, they're going to see your cover. They're going to see the colors first. Then they're going to see the title. Just think about how I'm walking into Barnes & Noble. I'm looking and there's a book on the end cap. They like that color. What does it say? Oh, facing racism. Okay, I'm interested in that. I turn it over. Okay, what's it about? Okay, this book looks like it's right for me. All right, now I'm going to judge the author. Can I get down with his writing style? Can I get down with what they got to say? Open up to page 1. All right, we got a little bit of a story here. I think in that one I started with, it was 9:13 in the evening and I was reading Alice in Wonderland or whatever. I made it very comfortable, but it was easy for them to get into. It's like, okay, I feel like I'm reading a story. And then I move into it. For others, it may be much more intense. In fiction, I know like Neil Gaiman, he opens up the Graveyard Book with, there was a hand in the dark and it held a knife. Very dramatic. In nonfiction, you probably won't start there, but if you do, you probably have a very darn good reading or reason, and you can probably hook a lot of people's attention there. I might open up a book with that line, like, that's actually not my line. But that's being a little bit sarcastic there, facetious. But the reason why you have a hook and why it's so important is it's going to bring the reader on board with you, and they're going to see whether or not they can trust you. Readers are brutal, I'll be honest,
Yeah.
Readers, unfortunately, let's say that you have a 50,000 word book and you get it 99% correct in terms of editing and technical and mechanics. That still leaves room for hundreds of errors. I've seen readers leave 1-star reviews for books with three typos. It's like, oh gosh. I've seen people put away a book where it's like, oh yeah, I don't like this writing style. I mean, I've done it myself. I'm personally not a huge fan of first person present tense. So when I see it, you've got about 2 to 3 sentences to change my mind. And it's not that it's bad, it's just readers want to read what they like.
Yeah.
So that's kind of all the tangents around how I think about a hook. How are you going to get readers to read past your page 1 or your first sentence?
First sentence, exactly. Sometimes it's just the first sentence. You got to get them in there. So you just mentioned another thing to go. There's so many things. You have a preference, or dispreference for first person
Present tense.
Present tense, yeah, sorry. And which kind of leads us into how to write for your audience and sort of how to structure things for a particular audience. I think you would mention you've done so many good videos yourself on story structure and stuff like that. But writing books that sell was something you had mentioned. Do you want to discuss that a little bit?
Absolutely. And first off, I appreciate you saying that, my videos have been good. I feel like I've just, if here's the surface of like writing and story and whatnot, like I haven't even scratched it yet.
Right. There's so much to it. There's so much to it.
But I'll probably be doing some more here soon on like writing, like y'all don't even know. Anyway, getting back on track. Thank you. So writing books that sell, in terms of the craft of writing and the structure of a story, you want to consider your audience, especially in the nonfiction space. If your goal is to sell, so one of the worst bits of writing advice I've ever seen is ignore the audience, just write for yourself in the love of writing. If you want to be a selling author, whether it's in fiction or nonfiction, that advice might be great for your morale, but you'll never trust your editor, you'll never trust your beta readers, and you'll probably be disconnected from your intended audience. So you have to consider writing for your audience. Now, what that means is understanding who they are and what their expectations are in a type of book. So let's say that you're a fantasy writer. If you're writing fantasy, your readers are going to expect certain tropes. They're going to expect some humans and non-humans. It may include elves and dwarves, or it may include, vampires and werewolves, who knows? But they're expecting more than human beings. They're also, depending on the level of fantasy, whether it's urban fantasy or high fantasy, expecting new and creative settings. For instance, Neil Gaiman writes a lot of, and I love him. He's like my favorite author.
He's so great. He's amazing.
He uses a lot of sort of urban fantasy and magical realism. So you're grounded in real world places. I think his book Neverwhere is like, the setting is London below. It's like, it's London.
The underground.
Like literally and magically underground. But you get this idea of the fantastic and the mundane. And those readers love that. I'm a fan of that. That's one reason why, comic book readers, they gravitate to certain comics. Like Marvel fans love Marvel because it's grounded in reality, versus DC, where you've got a lot of made up fantastical cities where you can have a godlike alien come through and sneeze half the galaxy away. But that's the expectation. When it comes to nonfiction, self-help, the reader's expectation is to be taught how to do something. And the goal then is always to be teaching, to structure the book from A to Z, from top to bottom, in and out, in a way that's going to get them the result, which is that they learn something. So if I'm going to teach you how to write a book, the first thing I have to do is assess, who am I teaching? Am I teaching an experienced writer who's studied writing and craft forever? Or am I teaching a novice writer who wants to learn how to be a better writer, or am I teaching someone who just wants to get a book done, doesn't care about the writing, and they'll hire a team of editors because they've got money like that?
Right.
You know, knowing who I'm targeting will determine how I structure the book and what information goes into it, and the language I use. If I'm targeting a group of college writers who are like going for their MBAs in fiction writing, I could talk about point of view, tense, narrative style, timing, pacing, all this stuff. I can talk about the rhythm of a sentence. I could write a whole chapter on just how to write one sentence and make it beautiful.
Yes.
The entrepreneurial writer does not care that much. They will pay people for that because they want to make sure that their language is readable. And so if I'm writing to this audience, I want to make sure that I'm also using language that they'll understand. I could talk about all this, but they wouldn't understand that. So I have to use more approachable language, something that's casual versus expert level in the terms of writing. And so to kind of summarize all of this, when we think about how we build our stories in the nonfiction realm, and we build it towards our audience, you want to think about, again, why is your audience picking up your book? What do they want to know? How do they want to consume it? You know, do people, if you're writing to educators, by all means, they would probably be really excited about a lot of citations and references to additional research.
Right.
If you're writing to the mom with 3 kids at home who's trying to squeeze this book in her 2 minutes of free time, you know, your references are going to be lost because she'll probably not pick up any of those other books. So it's going to take half a year to get through this one.
Yeah, she's like, I just wanted the information.
Thank you. I just want to know how to cook this dish.
Yeah.
Are they the type who's going to scroll through a food blog to get to the recipe, or are they going to read the whole blog?
Right. Personally, I'm a scroll through to the recipe kind of person.
I generally am too, unless they have a really good hook.
It's gotta be a great one though. That's great. So another thing that you've now brought in conveniently is content, right? Content and structure go hand in hand. One of my favorite videos that you've done was talking about how to use, I think, the how do you structure in telling a story. Your example was someone, I think you were in Target and you were picking up a card or something like that, and there are different ways. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I was in Walmart. Yes.
Walmart, right. You're picking up a card and there was a guy talking to you, and you told the story in a couple of different ways that emphasize different things. Can you talk a little bit about how your content and structure, how you structure it, how it influences people, and what you would choose according to what you want to highlight?
Absolutely. So I'll be honest, I have absolute absent minded professor vibes. I remember the video you're talking about. I can't remember what's in it. I'd have to go back and watch it. But
so many, like I should, like I feel like, yeah, sorry about that.
Talk about the subject. No problem. I am just personally surprised that someone watched and remembered, like, yes, thank you.
Yeah, it was a good one. It was really, I really paid a lot of attention to that one because it was a really good point. You're just like I said, you know, I mean, you don't have to remember, I think, this exact video to sort of get, I hope that to get what I'm sort of getting at.
Absolutely. So again, it goes back to your audience and the purpose behind the content, the purpose behind the story. So I can build a story and tell people all about how I was interacting with this person. And they might read it and think, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. It's a great way to intro this chapter, but why am I here?
Right.
Or I can tell the story in a way that keeps them engaged. I remember now. Okay, what we talked about in that video is you know, positioning of the story. And I kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier today, but positioning of the story. So there's a few different ways to incorporate story into your chapters. You can tell the story straight through and then talk about it afterwards. And in that, your reader's gonna be like constantly reading, but they're always gonna have that question, what is the story about? What are we getting to? What are we getting to? And so when the story concludes, or you get to a certain stopping point, you want to be able to interject some of that so what, a little bit of reflection in the self-help space, in the nonfiction space. The value of a story is measured by the so what, the impact of the reflection.
Right.
Another way to tell it would be to kind of checkerboard it, where you start out telling some of the story, and you add in a little bit of reflection, and you're in conversation with the reader as you're telling the story. So in that way, it's more conversational. Um, Imagine if you and I were out having coffee right now, and we're talking about things that happen in our lives. If I'm telling you a story, I'm probably not going to tell you A to Z what happened for 5 minutes straight. I might just make a pause, like, yeah, and this person came up to me and I was thinking, like, who the heck are you? And why are you still talking to me? What do you want? I would be telling you like all the real-time thoughts because you're getting the inside scoop. Your readers
Right.
actually will enjoy some of that. Like, okay, we're in a situation and oh, I get a peek into what they're thinking, how they're thinking about it. Okay. And you start to, and this is something that's super important in terms of showing versus telling. So there's a
Right.
concept of showing versus telling that I won't dive into here, but basically the idea here is that you want to lead your readers to conclusions so that it's reasonable for them to deduce without inherently telling them right up front. And so as you're telling your stories, it should be getting clearer and clearer what the purpose is. And then when the story concludes, then you tell them straight up explicitly and like, yeah, that makes, I totally see how that happened. For example, here's a small story, very small story. When I was writing my new book, I was focused one day on writing just a chapter a day. So I was working on chapter 4, which is essentially the start of the book for my particular book in terms of content. And in this moment, I was supposed to be writing. Like every possible distraction could have came up. And you know, like how when you set up a goal, it's like the universe is like, okay, I'm gonna support you with that goal. I'm also gonna support you by testing your discipline. And
I
so
love
here
it when
I'm
the universe
trying
does
to write.
that.
And I set myself up, I'm like, it should take me about 45 minutes to write this chapter, maybe less if I use speech to text. But it just so happened that as I start writing, I get all these new ideas. And the next thing you know, I'm on my phone to check for these ideas. Oh, and then there's a notification. Someone so messaged me. Oh, well, I think it's important. Well, maybe not. And I start checking things. And let me tell you, when I get sidetracked, sometimes my absent-minded professor brain will go down way too many conversations. I found myself in conversations about writing when I really should have been writing. And next thing you know, I'm like, I am so far behind. And let me tell you, Jen, this is something that if you're trying to write a book, I would strongly advise that you just set yourself apart from the distractions. Do the research beforehand or set yourself up a note to do the research afterwards. Because the moment you get into it, you'll end up just like me, getting into all the other weeds that you probably shouldn't have been in. Short story, just like that. Very easy to think up a situation, to discuss it, what happened to you, what you were going through, some thoughts around it, and why it matters. Now, if I were writing this in the book, it would definitely come out a little bit differently, have some re-edits and maybe stretched out a little bit. But if you're, say, halfway through a chapter and you need an additional story to illustrate a particular point, that essentially is about 2 to 3 paragraphs worth of story. Very easy to integrate. Here I was doing this thing. I set up myself this goal, and then this happened, and I thought about this, and let me tell you what I thought here. And it just totally didn't happen. And next thing you know, this happened, then that happened, and this happened. And here's why I'm telling this story to you. Boom.
That's perfect. Awesome. You know what? It's exactly 3:30 now. So maybe this is a good time to pause because we could go into like another hour and a half of structure talk. And I'm excited because Andre and I have been talking about potentially doing a training together, and that's where we will go crazy into this sort of thing. But I want to let you go. I know you've got a busy day and you've got a big drive home. So let's just say right now, thank you so much for coming and spending your time here. This has been so much fun. It's always so much fun to have you on.
Thank you so much for, again, having me on. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about things I love. I cannot wait to put this training together. I mean, there are so many things that we could dive into. It's all going to depend on who the audience is.
Exactly.
So I'm super excited to piece that together and just have a conversation I think there's so much here. And again,
So
we just
much.
here's the surface. We're a little bit closer. We almost scratched it.
Almost. Kind of like we rubbed it a little. We got a couple of like cells off the top.
I mean, honestly, I've got like 4 more books in my head. Like, okay, I need to write a book about that, about that, about that, about that. I'm like, I'm gonna find the time for this. I need to hire some people.
Right? It's that discipline you're talking about. I don't know about you, but that's not my strong suit. Well, thank you again. I really do appreciate it. This is always so much fun to talk to you. But yeah, I guess that's it. I'm not really wrapping this up very well. I'm just going to tell everybody out there, remember that everybody has a story to tell. So sit there and think about what is yours.